we'll be discussing who's afraid of Dynamics 365 managed solutions, which is almost everyone that I come encountered with, including myself. Just a little bit about me. I have 11 years experience, Dynamics consulting, various industries, but my entire career has been solely focused on Dynamics, CRM back in the day, and now 365, and now the Power Platform. Certified professional for D365 CE, speaker and Power Platform evangelist. I have a bachelor degree in interdisciplinary IT, so I really obsess over the relevance between technology and business. And little side note, I used to be a Navy photographer in a previous life. That was a long time ago. I do work currently for Dynamic Consultants Group. We are a Microsoft Gold partner. We're a full stack service for all Microsoft products. Feel free to reach out if you're interested. We have different resources available and serve the community as well as our clients. Today, we're just going to go over an overview of solutions. We're going to talk about what they are just to get a foundation. We're going to talk about the comparison between them, managed versus unmanaged. We're going to discuss some of the challenges that come up, how to address solution conflicts. And then at the end, I'm going to throw in a little bit about solution lifecycle management. However, really, when you're thinking about solutions, that is your application lifecycle management tool in the Power Platform in Dynamics 365. So it's important to know that all of what we're going to discuss today is going to help you understand how to manage your app or how to manage your environments so that you have some control over changes, promotion of code, stuff like that. That is typical for traditional app development, but in our world sort of falls to the side because we're rapid deployers. Dynamics 365 works well because you can rapidly deploy solutions and changes. But in that comes the danger of losing track of your changes and not being able to roll back or control them. What's happened is in the industry, inside technology, what's happening is agile has become more common, and people are expecting a more rapid deployment or a rapid response to user demands. Also, we've pulled into the Dynamics community some developers who have an Azure DevOps mindset, where they want to control code. They're used to checking in code. They're used to a solution being managed in a way that allows for lifecycle management, growth, versioning, stuff like that. So we're getting more developers into the community that have this mindset that are asking, well, where is this inside Dynamics? How is Dynamics controlled? Also, the business is getting faster. Businesses are asking us today to make changes to apps immediately. They want to see the result right away. Previously, in the old world, when you were custom building apps, a requirement could come in and it may take 6 weeks, 2 months to deploy that requirement, unless it's a break and a hot fix. But in our world today, the business is expecting a rapid turnaround of their changes. They also expect a seamless update experience. The business doesn't want to know that you deployed a change and it broke production. That's inconsistency. That's going to cause user adoption issues for you. And that's why we want to have a minimal impact on production. We want to manage or maintain, it's hard not using the manage word when I'm talking solutions, but we want to maintain our solutions in a way that there's little impact to our developers and there's little impact absolutely to our users. Some of the challenges you come across when dealing with solutions. Import timeouts. Sometimes the solution's too big and it just times out. Solution layering and application behavior. Understanding how solutions layer and how the app behaves based on those layers. That's the mystery we're going to unravel today. Merger configurations, how mergers occur. Really, mergers only occur on forms, a sitemap, and ribbon diffs. And ribbon diffs is your ribbon across the bar, the action bar. That's the only time things are merged from solutions. Other times, it's always the last imported change trumps what happened before it. What happens when there's collisions? That's when you have a component that exists in multiple solutions. What happens to the user experience? Patching solutions used to be an option. The Microsoft has rolled that back and is deprecating that. They are not recommending using the create a patch of a solution anymore. Deleting configurations. So how do we delete a field from an environment? There's different ways to do that. And then automation. So it hasn't always been easy to automate an application lifecycle management process with Dynamics 365 CE. So these are some of the challenges. Some of these we'll address and we'll figure out how to handle. Some common pitfalls. Having multiple solutions in a single dev instance. Now, this isn't a very big pitfall, but if you have multiple solutions and you're not controlling the components that are in these solutions, you run the risk of collision. Because in the image here on the presentation, solution 1 introduces entity A, adds new form for entity B. Solution 2 introduces entity B, adds new form for entity A. So now we have a dependency from one solution to another, when in reality, those changes should have been done in the same solution. So when you move that solution from one environment to another, you move those dependencies together. Otherwise, if you import solution 2 before solution 1, it's going to fail if entity A doesn't exist in the environment already. And likewise for solution 1, if entity B doesn't exist in the target environment, it's going to fail on import as well. So that's what I mean by multiple solutions in a single dev instance. You can have hundreds of solutions in a dev instance. That's not the issue. The issue is if you're not managing those solutions or maintaining those solutions with some structure and rules, you're going to create dependencies between the solutions that'll cause issues in higher environments, moving from dev to QA to prod. Multiple solution publishers across solutions being developed. This is a danger. So solutions, a managed solution cannot have 2 different publishers, can only have 1 publisher. And that means the components in that managed solution all have to be from the same publisher. If you create a publisher called Dev1 and create a solution using Dev1 publisher, everything has that prepended DEV before the customization. However, if you create another solution and you create a publisher Dev2 and it has DEV2 in front of the prepended schema name, you cannot put Dev1 components into the solution that has a different publisher and export it as managed. It won't allow you. So you create limitations and walls if you have too many publishers. So sometimes I see environments where they'll create publishers for each dev so they know who built what. But now if you have to share components across solutions, you can't use managed solutions. You could move them in an unmanaged solution, but if you're trying to control your environments, you really want to work towards a managed solution environment, then you want to avoid multiple publishers. There really should just be 1 publisher that you're using for that environment if you plan on sharing the components that you build. Other pitfalls. Lack of good solution version control. So not incrementing the version properly when exporting a solution, not keeping track of what version numbers mean. That's been a common issue. You want to have good version control. If it's 1.2 in dev, it should be 1.1 in the higher environments. When you export 1.2, you change dev to 1.3 and move 1.2 to the higher environments. So good version numbering is important. Solution segmentation is important. Having specific components grouped together, and so you're only updating what you touch, what you really want to adjust. That way you're not moving everything all at once all the time. Solution dependency version mismatch between environments. So this could be dependencies, like I was talking about, between solutions. And when you're moving from environments, those dependencies can cause you issues on import. Manually moving solutions, that's a risk. Now, that's what we all do. I mean, that's how I manage it, but I'm going to show you at the end, DevOps now has connectors and tools that can automate the import and movement, the movement of a solution from one environment to another. And then deploying unmanaged solutions to productions. This is going to become a real danger as Microsoft pushes more towards a managed environment in production. The product owner years ago, said in one of the conferences that he would love that managed only in production, that they never allowed unmanaged solutions imported into production. Now, of course, there's too many historical environments for them to enforce that right away, but it lets you know where the product team's going, where they really want to push towards managed only in production. What is a solution? A solution is just a zip file. So for those who don't know, it contains these 3 files inside a zip file. Customizations is all your changes. Every component has a node in the XML. It's a solution is a tool. I identify it sometimes as a shopping cart, where you're putting things into the cart that you want to move from one environment to another. And then it gives a similar naming prefix because it has the publisher. So the publisher controls the naming prefix of the components created within that solution. There's no point in source control for solutions. You can, and I've done this before, where when I export a solution, version 1.2, I save that in a shared location for the client so that they have a history of their solutions. But you're not really source controlling the changes because all you can do is save the zip file. You can't track changes to the zip file. So if someone goes and makes changes in solution 1.2 and they do not change the version when they export, they have a zip file with the exact same name, version 1.2. And so that's really, the source control versioning is difficult because it's manual. Now, if we automate the deployment of solutions, then the system is updating the versions and keeping that on track. And then it's risky for multiple developers to work on same solution. So if you're logged in and then you got 2 people working on the same solution, editing and modifying at the exact same time, I don't recommend that. That's dangerous. I've seen issues where we've lost changes because of saving and updating within the solution and publishing. It's gotten a lot better, but it's still a little bit of a risk. So what are things you can put in a solution? Microsoft is calling this making components solution aware. And you'll see in the back end, they are adding continually to what components can be solution aware. they're increasing everything to be solution aware as much as possible. So you have the data model, which is your entities, tables, your columns or attributes, global option sets, your user interface, which is your web resources, dashboards, ribbons, sitemaps, dialogues. You can add reports, templates, security roles, system settings, virtual entities, webhooks, connections now. You can add connection references inside of a solution. So when you're creating a flow and you have a connection reference, you can put all that together in the solution so it moves to the next environment and it'll prompt you to update the connection in the new environment. That's great. Your workflows, so all your Power Automates can go into a solution and be moved. So Managed was introduced in version 5.0 of the Dynamics world. Two main arguments against using Managed was familiarity. We do what we've always done, right? We've always just moved unmanaged solutions, so that works. Let's just keep doing it. And the complexity that Managed introduces. So managed solutions cause complexity and unintended dependency issues because of the way the system reads solutions and handles them. Unmanaged. So unmanaged was intended for dev only. So you would create an unmanaged solution. Every time you create a solution in an environment, it is by default unmanaged. You can't create a managed solution. You export an unmanaged solution and make it managed. That's what you do. And then you can import the managed solution to another environment. So your dev is going to be all unmanaged solutions pretty much, except for any managed solutions you pull from a third party or an ISV. You purchase a solution from AppSource and it installs onto your environment. Those are going to be managed, but your customizations and configurations for your environment in dev are all going to be in unmanaged solutions. Unmanaged customizations exist on top of the system and other managed solutions. So there's an unmanaged layer, and I'll show you the layers here in a little bit, that sits on top of everything. And every time you import an unmanaged solution, everything gets changed in the unmanaged layer. It all just goes into one layer. You can have 50 unmanaged solutions in an environment. All those changes exist in one layer. It directly customizes the components. So when you make the change and you import unmanaged, if that component was, a string field with 50 characters and you changed it to 25, that component is now 25 characters. It's changed immediately. The unmanaged solutions don't own any of the customization or components. So if you delete an unmanaged solution, nothing happens to the environment. You're just cleaning up your folders. Unmanaged solutions are folders to show what changes are made at what time, but you can delete an unmanaged solution in an environment, all the components and customization stays, nothing happens. Managed is meant to be compiled app code ready for deployment. So for the developers, when you compile and you commit your code to a repository, that's the intent of managed solutions. Unmanaged solution is exported as managed. The identity of the solution cannot be modified. So someone else can't change the publisher in a managed solution. Components cannot be added or removed in a managed solution. So once you import a managed solution into an environment, someone can't go in and change what's in that managed solution. You will always know what changes were implemented in that managed solution. They exist within their own discrete layer, so they sit like a like a cake, you know, layered on top of each other. And each managed solution has their own layer. They are upgrade capable, so I could import an update to a managed solution and it'll update what's there. They merge with other layers and system layers to present application behavior to the user. So the user experience is a combination of all these layers together. And then managed solutions can be uninstalled, which removes the components that it installed from the environment. So this can cause data loss. So while it's pitched as a benefit of managed solutions, it's a danger, because if you uninstall a managed solution in production and it has custom fields in it, it's going to delete those fields. So you got to be careful. So solutions exist in layers. It occurs on import when a component is changed within one or more solutions. The dependency chain of a component goes through each solution based on date of import. So the last one imported has the most recent change, except with managed solutions. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. If you import an upgrade to a solution, it goes down to the layer that it exists. And I got a good example of that in a minute. We'll walk through it. But the layers are created every time a dependency is added or changed. Creation of a new component or version of a solution creates a new layer. It controls application behavior. These layers are very important. Microsoft has just recently, a year ago, I guess not so recent, over a year ago, added the ability now that you can look at the solution layers of a component to see what is causing the behavior. So here's the layers. Up top, we have application behavior. This is what the user sees, right? Down below, the first thing that they have that controls application behavior is the unmanaged layer. That's where unmanaged solutions occur. That's when you import an unmanaged solution, all the changes go to the unmanaged layer. Below the unmanaged layer is your managed solutions by date of import. So CDS solution was the first solution imported into this environment, which is common. When you stand up an environment, you're going to have all of these Microsoft solutions installed that contain your Dynamics 365 app within them. And then if you have other solutions that you've imported of your own configurations as managed, like solution A, solution B, they layer on top of each other. So there's one layer per managed solution, and they sit under the unmanaged solution. See, solution C and solution D aren't separate layers because they're unmanaged. They all go into this unmanaged layer. So when we're talking about conflicts between the layers, it's really per component. So if your component is edited in multiple solutions, then you have to figure out the conflicts that are going to occur to understand what the user will see. Excuse me. So in this example, we have an entity that's in the system solution at the bottom, but is edited in unmanaged solution D. So whatever edit occurs in unmanaged solution D, that's what the user sees. Same with sitemap. Sitemap is edited in system solution. It's updated in solution B. And then it's updated again using an unmanaged solution in solution C. Therefore, the user will see whatever changes occurred in solution C. because that unmanaged layer is on top of everything. You can update managed solution B all day long. You can import and update because you're not getting the experience. You're like, why am I not seeing what I'm putting in solution B? That's because no matter what you do in the managed solution, the unmanaged solution trumps, will always beat you. And that's the difficulty of having mixed unmanaged and managed solutions, is it becomes troublesome to get your changes to appear to the user if you have unmanaged changes and managed changes. When you're importing managed solutions, you have the option to override unmanaged customizations. What this does is it updates the managed solution layers and then applies the same updates to the unmanaged customizations. So what this does is if you have a component in your solution and it's modified in the unmanaged layer, it will remove that unmanaged layer change so that your changes appear. It's very risky to do. You really want to know what your outcome is going to be when you click that button. So don't by default remove override unmanaged customizations. You'd only do it if you're really specifically troubleshooting something and you know specifically that it has an unmanaged layer on a component and you want it removed. The better way is to go into the environment, find the component, look at the solution layers, and you can remove unmanaged layers from a component on an individual basis through the backend, through a solution. Solution segmentation was introduced in version 8. It provides granular control and it allows adding subcomponents to the tables. So previously you added everything when you added a solution previous to version 8. And then if you wanted to edit one field on the account, you had to add everything in the account. Well, now you don't have to do that. You can just add the one field. That's what the segmentation allows. You can add all assets. So when you're adding an existing, so we're talking, I'm in a solution, it's unmanaged, I'm in dev, and I'm going to add components or assets to the solution. I'm adding existing components from the environment. I have a choice to add all assets. That is adding all attributes, forms, views, visualizations, relation, all the stuff related to the table. That's part of the table that adds it all. This can create unintended dependencies. If you do this for all the time in every solution, then you're going to have components that exist in multiple solutions. And that creates those dependencies that you may not intend for. And you may modify something that's not ready to go to the higher environment. Perhaps on the table, you're only modifying a column or an attribute, and a coworker is working on another solution dealing with business rules. Well, if you add everything to your solution, you're going to promote the business rule changes that your coworker is working on, and that they may not be ready to go. So you want to keep it real small, your solution real focused on just the changes you need. When do we use add all assets? We use this on creation of a new table and deployment of table to an environment that does not have previous version of the table installed. So when you're creating a new table, you add everything in the solution, because when you move to the next environment, you need to create everything in that next environment. Adding just a subcomponent, so an alternative option to adding all assets is adding a subcomponent. So you can select each component individually giving you granular control. It prevents the unintended modification of something that is not ready to be promoted. And then you can find dependencies, and if they exist in target, they can be ignored. So if your solution, you have a table and you only edit 2 columns, but you get a warning that that table is dependent on another table, if you know your higher environment has that other table, you can ignore that dependency because you know it exists. Producing an update for an already deployed solution is ideal, because then you're just moving the components you're changing. And working with unmanaged solutions, segmenting is very important. The include entity metadata option. So when you add a table, you have the option to include entity metadata. This is the properties for the entity or table. That's the metadata it's talking about. So the enable audit, enable mobile, turn on security, trying to think of the other settings. All the properties or settings for a table, that's the entity metadata it's talking about. We use this when we're deploying a new table or changing a table behavior. So if you make a change to the settings in dev, you need to include the entity metadata in the solution to move the settings from dev to a higher environment. Segmentation is important because it reduces collisions between multiple developers modifying an environment. It reduces the size of your solutions, so you don't have to have these big bulky solutions that have absolutely everything in them. It reduces complexity. You know precisely what was changed in that solution. And it improves your import times. Solution imports on very large solutions can take 15 minutes sometimes, or 10 minutes. It's a long time. If you have 3 or 4 environments, it's an hour or so of just moving, importing files. So there's options for updating solutions. You can do a standard upgrade, which means you just increment the solution version number. You retain existing unmanaged solution container. So you keep the same publisher name. You're just incrementing the version. You remove components that you're not changing. And then when you export, your version number is incremented. And then the import creates a new layer directly above the previous layer, effectively replacing it. This is for a managed solution. So this is saying a standard upgrade is you're just changing the version number in dev. You can change the version number when you export it, but you could also remove components from that managed, what in another environment is a managed solution, and only move whatever you're changing. But the name of the solution, the publisher, and the version increment will control where the layer gets created when it's imported. So here's an example. So there's a base solution, right? Version 1. And it's got an entity on it, the account, and the account number field with length of 20. It's a managed solution. The publisher is system. So next, solution A gets created in dev as unmanaged, gets exported as managed, and imported into this environment, and it's changing the length to 30. So the user sees the length of 30 because it has a different name, a different publisher. It gets its own layer. So here's solution A, again, still sitting here with number 30, but someone comes along and says, we need the length to be 50. So in dev, they create solution B with a different publisher. They add the account number field to that unmanaged solution, export it as managed, version 1, and they import it to this environment. The user now sees the length equals 50. Well, then the requirements come back and say, we need the length to be 35. So the developer goes into dev, modifies solution A to change account number length to 35. Then exports it as a managed solution, increments the version 1.0.0.1. It's the same solution name, same publisher, version, one more version higher. When he imports that managed, or she imports that managed solution to the higher environment, it now becomes and replaces the previous version of that solution. So now length is 35 at this layer though. Remember, the layers determine what the user sees, and the user still sees length equals 50. Because this managed solution is sitting on top of this other one. You can import version 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 as many times as you like, but you're never going to get the user to see your changes because that component exists in another solution. Two things went wrong here. When they needed to change account number, they should have never created another solution. It should have been changed in the original solution A. That's what I mean by solution segmentation being important, so that you know what components exist in what solutions. And then two, the there's no need to create another publisher just to change a field. So, but this is a good example of how these layers impact each other. So that was a standard upgrade. You're just upgrading a solution. You can do an in-place patch, and this is reusing a solution container and version. So you take an existing unmanaged solution in dev, same publisher name and version. You can choose to remove what you're not going to change. Export it as managed. Don't change the version. Import updates on import. So you have an unmanaged solution A and it's version 1.0. You export it as managed, but you leave it 1.0. You don't increment it to 1.1. You then import updates into a higher environment, and it will update the existing layer for the solution. The problem here is that you can't simply uninstall those changes and you can't separate new changes from previous version. I don't even know why I have this slide. This is another way to do an update, but it's completely not recommended. You change the solution name to denote a patch number. So you have solution A unmanaged in dev, and you change it to solution A patch 1. Well, and then you export that as a managed solution. On import, that's going to create a whole new managed layer because the name doesn't match an existing managed solution. And so it creates deviations in app behavior due to the order of solution import, and creating patches of solutions is no longer supported. The button create a patch. So here's the example again. So solution A gets imported, length of 30. Solution B is imported with length of 50 because it's on top of A. The user sees 50. If they take solution A and they rename it A_P1, boom, it's a whole new managed solution layer. So your name, I know this isn't ideal, but that's what the system uses to match a managed solution importing to another existing managed solution, is just the name and the publisher. If the name is the same and the publisher is the same, it's going to import at that layer. But we change the name to A_P1, and that creates a new layer. And now this user sees length equals 35, which was our end result. But we've created this complexity of solution layers now, all because we didn't manage or segment the components in our solutions to begin with. Again, the real fix for this is that you just made all the changes to account number in the solution A managed solution. There is an option when importing managed solutions to stage for upgrade. Upgrade, when you import and you just import the solution, it immediately upgrades the solution. The managed solution with the higher version is imported directly above the managed solution with the lower version. And then this is straightforward updates, no need to delete stuff. Stage for upgrade imports as a holding solution. This allows you the ability to delete components or conduct data migration before applying the solution. So stage for upgrade is a way that you can remove fields. So let's say you have one field and it's a string field and the business wants to change it to a number field. You have to create a whole new number field. When you import that new number field, you don't want to delete that old field because you need to move the data first. So you would stage the solution for upgrade, move the data, and then apply upgrade, which would move that other field and apply your changes for the user to see. Version 9 introduces constraints on plugins. So new plugins types are based on assembly version number. This is very important because when your plugins are getting created, if the assembly version number isn't in order, it's going to throw errors. So you want to make sure your development environments are staying consistent with your solution. So only when major minor assembly version is changed does it apply the update. Avoids missing dependencies and solves for import and deletion failures. So this allows for more control over the plugins, but also requires that you're not developing plugins in all different in a way that's creating separate or disparate assembly versions. I don't know. That's a developer note. It's just a knowledge of if you have a developers working on plugins, then you just want to mention to them that the assembly versions matter. So what do we do? What do we do with all of this to make a difference? First, we determine what kind of application you're creating. Next, you determine what solution boundaries you need to create, and then create a repeatable, predictable deployment process. So you could be creating a complete application. So that's, different capabilities and functionality. It could be field service, it could be customer service, it could be sales, it could be the whole application. It could be applications that are a part of or connecting your CE app with other services. It could be augmenting existing functionality, which is pretty much what we're mostly doing, feature additions, or it could be task-based. So augment functionality, but specific user experience focused on subset of business tasks. So it could be business process. You're working on this process inside the application. Really, you're determining what are you building, right? And then is it going to be a single versus multiple instances? you got to ask to determine these solution boundaries. Will the app be deployed to multiple customers? Will the application be deployed to multiple regions? Will the app be deployed to a single global instance? Most of us are dealing with just a single instance. The key for when I'm talking solution boundaries, I'm talking about how you create solutions. What do you put together inside your solution? And time independence is important. Are there different iteration timelines? So can you deploy these changes all together? Or will some changes be ready before others? And therefore, you should separate, typically I'll separate solutions by almost functional area, because maybe I'll finish account management before I finish case management. And so I can deploy the changes for account management without impacting the case work that's ongoing. Will the app work if behavior is split? That's what I'm talking about. Is there a need to benefit to releasing a subset of app behavior on a different cadence? Is there clear separation? That's separation in functionality. So your team structure will determine solution boundaries. Do you need to create a dev solution just for the dev effort, so that all of the web resources and the plugins and anything that's developed and has code exists together in one solution? That's a good practice. But if your team isn't that separate, even if it's one person, I would still recommend that, because you're going to move development stuff together when it's ready. I'm trying to go through this because this gets a little wonky here, and there's some other parts I want to cover real quick. So your environments, your base should be dev, test, and prod. You should have 3 environments. Your sandbox environments are dev and test, and prod is a production environment. You only pay for a production environment. You don't pay for your sandbox environments. Microsoft's recommendation, this is crazy, is an environment for each developer. So you have a common environment, and then the developer exports, has a mimicked environment. They work in their mimicked environment, and then they import changes to the common environment together. That's a little too much in my mind. Really, we stick with dev, test, and prod. Here's another example. You could have 2 team members working in this dev instance, promote unmanaged changes to a common dev instance. So they're all working in their own instance. This works for larger teams. I've used it on larger projects. It allows for the individuals making the changes to be in their own instance and not interfering with each other. So if someone breaks something, it doesn't break yours, right? You should have a solution deployment plan that follows something like this. So assignment, user story and work items are assigned in DevOps or whatever ticket system you're using, to follow your tasks. And then in the assignment of that task, there should be a solution that you say where those changes are made. So there should be central control of the solution right from the beginning. So you assign work items, you analyze and design the work items, determine if there's conflicts or dependencies with components being configured. So are these work items modifying the same components? And then configuration and development, you need to determine your sprint or your release cadence. And maybe you create solutions around those cadences. Maybe sprint 1 is its own solution, and then sprint 2 is another solution. That's another way to group them. Here's a link And at the end, I'll have a slide where you can download the presentation and get these links. So the suite of tools is available through NuGet on Visual Studio. The solution packager extracts and packs solution files and allows for source control to be used. So now, if you use solution packager, it will unpack a solution and create it as individual files in a source control folder. And then you can use solution packager in your automation in the pipeline to package together the changes into one solution and move that solution forward. The configuration migration tool moves the solutions once it's packaged together. Your package deployer can deploy multiple solutions. It can deploy reference data. It can deploy custom code. The package deployer would then take your different solutions and you can move them all together, and including data. It's how the trial environments are created. There's a package deployer that deploys all the solutions. We have the UI automation test library. That's if you want to start interested in the user testing, automating some user testing. And then the online management API, resetting environments, restoring environments. Those are all available now through an API and through your code. So solution management, you have solutions, you build, you test, deploy, right? Solution management levels really of sophistication. Level 1, you're using one solution, you manually export it and import it. Basic version control, right? You have a file system somewhere and you save the zip file. Level 2, you start working with multiple solutions. You start, because you're working with multiple solutions, you have well-defined boundaries and solution dependencies. There's a manual extraction of solution via solution packager, and you check that into a version control system. So like I said, solution packager will unpack a solution into individual files. So now you can version control in a Git repository that solution. Level 3, you have good solution segmentation, solution patching is used, and really that's the solution upgrade process. Your solution export and extraction is via the solution packager, is automated. And then level 4, where you get really sophisticated, you have common solution libraries are defined and refactored. So now your solution components are all managed with automation. So as a developer, I come into an environment, I pick what pieces I want to work on, I export that into my environment, I work on them, I import it back into the other environment, and essentially check in my code, and the package deployer handles expanding that and putting it in a Git repository. So where do we start? Really create the process in your head and on paper first. Design out and think ahead of how you're going to manage your solutions before you start. The package deployer can be used with manual solution packaging and builds, so don't be intimidated by it. You can use the package deployer manually. And then you can implement the package solution packager to unpack solutions to source control. So this is an example, right? So dev CRM, here's the solution. It's expanded, it's unpacked using the solution packager. And then it gives an individual file for each one of the changes. You can then pack it back together into another solution and then import it into their higher environment. So this is your central source control. And as you're adding solutions, it's growing this list in here. And then you determine what you want from this list and pack that together to create another solution and import that to another environment. Tips for unmanaged solutions: keep the solution size small. Again, it's not unmanaged versus managed. They're two different things, and they do not live well together. So if you're unmanaged, you're stuck. You're sticking unmanaged because you would have to redo all of your changes in managed solutions and then remove your unmanaged layers as you imported them. It's an extensive cleanup process that is very painful. So for now, Microsoft isn't forcing you to go managed. Stick with unmanaged. But the way you can implement good control is by having small solution sizes, a strong naming convention, centralizing your solution control. So when something's ready to be promoted to a higher environment, it's going through one person. These works for small environments, quick feature releases, right? They want to see changes to this or that, and rapid dev and deployment. Tips for managed: single publisher across all environments, least number of solutions possible. So avoid multiple solutions modifying the same component. So you want real big solutions in managed. Remember that merge only matters for those 3 items: model-driven apps, forms, and sitemap. Solution segmentation is important for managed solutions. And then just remember, because it's sorted by date of import, the top one wins. Here's the link of references where I pulled all of this information from. Very useful if you want to dig further. Here's the PowerShell references that now can be automated for the deployment of solutions. And then I'll open up for questions. I just got about 2 minutes left here. I appreciate everyone's time today. You can scan the QR code, or I can paste the link in the chat.
Thank you, Tom. So we are at the end of this session now. So I'm not sure if we'll have time for Q&A, but what you should definitely do is scan the QR code if you want to be shortlisted for a prize. So we will share that in the chat as well. So you covered a lot there today, Tom, and I think it's almost a cheat sheet for solutions, really. So everything that you need to know, I feel you definitely have covered it there. So well done on that, Tom.
Yeah, and if they have questions, they can go to that link and submit their name and email, and we can follow up.
Excellent. So there you go. So thank you for that, Tom. So if you've got any questions on that, please submit it via that link, and you'll be able to get any answers you need. But we are at the end of the hour, so I just want to thank Tom. I want to thank Dynamics Consultants Group. We do have some winners for some prizes, so they'll be announced tomorrow. So don't forget to scan that barcode for a last chance to win, to be shortlisted for those prizes. That'll be announced tomorrow. So once again, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So that was Tom joining us from Florida. And that brings us on to our last session of the day. It's been a long day. I think we've been going for 12 hours today, guys. So this is the last session of the day. And it's none other than from Jeff, all the way from the US as well. Hello there, Jeff.
Hello, how are you? Good afternoon.
Hello there, Jeff. Thank you for joining us today. I know you've had a very busy session and you've managed to join us today. So thank you so much. So perfectly timed on the hour for your session. So I know you're a very busy man, and a great way to complete the day 1 of the Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement Bootcamp, which is focused on sales and marketing, is definitely on this session, which is on the sales process. So, Jeff, without further ado, I'd like to hand the show over to you.
Thank you. Hey, can you give me a quick